Two teenagers on their way to a keg party driving a 1960 Studebaker disappear into the darkness of a South Dakota night. For decades, no one sees or hears from them. Throughout that time, the focus shifts to a serial rapist and potential serial murderer. After 40-plus years, the case is finally solved. But trust me on this one, you will not believe the outcome or see it coming. My name is M. William Phelps. I am an investigative journalist and the true crime author of close to 50 books. I've dedicated the past 20 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. "17-year-old Pamela Ann Jackson has this bookish librarian look about her. Very short, dark black hair, a sort of oval face, thick-framed black owlish glasses, and a rather friendly, comforting presence. Pamela's good friend, Cheryl, or Sherri Miller, looks quite the polar opposite. Arresting blue eyes, long and flowing dirty blonde hair, pudgy cheeks, all set against a warm and flattering smile. During the week of May 19th, 1971, the girls had been invited to a keg party out at the local quarry, or Mullet Farm, as it was sometimes called, a popular local hangout where the kids could drink some beers and not be bothered. We've all been there. A kegger in the woods with our high school classmates. Those were the days. Brule Creek, which is near Elk Creek in Union County, South Dakota, flows directly into the Big Sioux River. Brule is an American Indian name and is south of Sioux Falls, Harrisburg, and Lenox. It's wide open country out there. The sky, a mesmerizing globe of blue during the day and a flawless canvas of black with sparkling diamonds at night. Elk Point sits on an elbow of the Missouri River, or Missouri, depending on where you're from. The horizon in these parts feels endless, as if you can see into the skyline forever. Though the girls weren't so much into the party scene, they decided that they'd actually go this time. They were excited and wanted to celebrate a little bit, see some friends from school perhaps, and maybe even prove to everyone they were not as prudish as some had made them out to be. On the night of the party, May 19th, the girls meet up with several boys from school they know. It's somewhere around 10 p.m. They had just come from visiting Sherri's grandmother in the hospital. When they arrive at the Gary Owen Church parking lot to meet up with the boys, one of the boys lays out directions for them to the Mullet Farm and quarry. They had never been. "We will follow behind you," one of the girls says. Sherri had been given permission to drive her grandfather's 1960 Studebaker Lark, a big beast of a vehicle, seemingly made of steel. A car her grandfather had warned them that uses a quart of oil every 25 to 50 miles and doesn't run, in his words, mechanically sound. The girls did not want to depend on anyone else for a ride to the party and wanted to be able to leave when they felt like it. A smart move, I think. Just that spring, Sherri had changed her look considerably. She cut her hair short, above her chin, and into a bob, which made her look much older and mature. Her face had thinned out some, too, and you could see how she was morphing into adulthood rather quickly. One important piece of information within this truly incredible case I have for you this week would be the conditions of the road and especially the bridge where the girls were traveling that night, heading out to the Elk Creek Quarry in Mullet Farm. The bridge and road were rarely used. This is far off the beaten path from the main roads. There was very little traffic out there at that time of night to begin with, And according to county records, the bridge had been inspected every 2 years leading up to 1971. So, although it was old, the bridge had been deemed safe to drive on. All of this will factor into the case some 40 plus years later. So it's May 19th, after 10 p.m., and the girls are heading out to a party, which they began to have second thoughts about attending, one witness later says. What's more, the Studebaker is over 10 years old at the time and not at all that reliable a vehicle. It is also a lot to handle for a driver with only about a year's worth of driving experience. As the two vehicles, the boys in front leading the way, the girls following behind, head down that road, according to what the boys later tell police, they missed the turn for the gravel pit. The girls have no idea where they are going and had apparently kept following along as the boys overshoot the turnoff for the gravel pit. At some point, the boys realize what they did and stop, do a K-turn, and are now heading south, back toward the turn they had missed. After turning the car around, they realize immediately the Studebaker is nowhere in sight. Had the girls at some point bailed out of the trip to the quarry? Had they gotten stuck somewhere and the boys in the car ahead failed to notice? As all of this is going on, another vehicle heading out to the party that night, with two high schoolers inside, just happens to catch up behind the Studebaker close to that turn. When asked later on, the two kids in that vehicle said the Studebaker had taken a left heading away from the quarry instead of a right heading toward the quarry, just as the car in front of them missed that turnoff. So I hope you get the picture here of what's going on. They're all driving down that road. The boys missed a turn. They spin their car around, and boom, the girls in the Studebaker are not there. Maybe Sherri and Pam decided at the very last minute against going to the party. It's important to note here that several witnesses say the two girls were the only two people in the Studebaker. So, they had not stopped anywhere to pick anyone else up or stopped along the way. They were alone. I don't think there's any question about this fact. The boys make it to the big keg party and basically forget about Sherri and Pam. They assume that the girls decided not to go to the party and instead drove home. When the following morning comes, it doesn't take long for word to spread that the girls never made it home. And with that, rumors begin spreading. One of the boys in the car up ahead of the girls says, "When we stopped at the bottom of the hill to turn around, we never saw their headlights behind us anymore." A classmate tells local media that some people assume the girls ran off to a hippie commune or drove to California, but they wouldn't have done that. They were good old farm girls, very family-oriented, very church-oriented. As far as the local police looking for them are concerned, the last people to have seen the girls would have been those boys leading the girls to the party, if what they say is true. In addition to that second car that came up later on their tail and reported seeing the girls take a left instead of a right and drive away from the party. The other factor here is that it's 1971. Investigative techniques for missing people are basically a flashlight and some warm bodies, maybe someone making phone calls. Bottom line is, with two teenagers last seen driving a car on a lonely, desolate road, simply vanishing into the still of the night without any explanation whatsoever, law enforcement has absolutely zero to go on. All they can really do is ask questions and get search parties together, which they of course do over the next several days. Part of that search includes Elk Creek and the old roads heading to the quarry and beyond. But after days of searching, they find nothing. It's as if the car drove away and was sucked up into the gamma rays of an alien spaceship, disappearing forever. Gone. A few weeks after the girls disappear, law enforcement seems to get its first major lead. The Clay County Sheriff's Office takes a call from Pamela Jackson's neighbor. I overheard a phone call, he says, between Pam and a man named David. The tipster explains he was on a party line when he recognized Pam's voice talking to this dude, David. And just for reference, a party line is a number you call into, and there's just scores of different people on the line, conversations going on, and you pipe in. It's like a live chat room, you could say. The neighbor is asked to come into the sheriff's department and file a report and describe exactly what he overheard. That's a semi-decent cliffhanger, I think. Let's break here before getting into several shocking twists and turns in this very bizarre case, which I will say here is ultimately solved, and the conclusion is not what you might be thinking. I need a favor. Please spread word about our show on social media and word of mouth, of course. And subscribe to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Don't forget to leave a review of the show, especially on Apple Podcasts. I'm doing this show independently now, free from any corporate or big podcasting media company involvement. And this allows me to bring you more of the content you want to hear and have written in and asked me for. This is completely our show. Reviews and subscriptions truly help. I could not do this show without you. And that support, I must tell you, means everything to me personally. It's incredibly humbling. And I want to thank each of you for listening. I mean this. You have a lot of choices out there, and I'm grateful you've landed on Crossing the Line. We can grow this show together, which will allow me to do even bigger things with it and bring you the content you want. If you go to crossingtheline.biz, mwilliamphelps.com, or look in the show notes, you can contact me to suggest cases or just say hello. Please look for me across all social media platforms at M. William Phelps. That's the @ symbol in my name, M. William Phelps. Be right back. Let's get right back into the nosy neighbor who reports overhearing Pam talking to this dude, whom he calls David, on that party line in the days just before the girls went missing. David and Pam were talking about David slamming Pam's hand in a car door, the neighbor tells police. He seems to think this might have something to do with the girl's disappearance. What's David's last name? They asked the tipster. Oh, that I do not know. Great. After asking the neighbor a few more questions, the interview is then filed away. And I am assuming that they put very little weight into what the neighbor gave them. The information was vague. There is not a lot to go on, except I want you to remember this, the name David. From 1971 all the way to 2004, 33 years, the case of the missing high school girls from South Dakota heading to a keg party grows an inch-thick layer of frost over it, cold as a bare ass out in a South Dakota winter. During this time, the Attorney General's office in-state creates a cold case unit. And that new division picks up Pam and Sherri's case as its first investigation. They reread all the reports, re-interview scores of people, and lo and behold, wouldn't you know, they wind up landing on a true piece of garbage in every sense of the word, by the name David. David Lycan, a local who knew of the girls, and in those years after the girls went missing, had been imprisoned for violent rape, kidnapping, and a host of additional violent felonies involving many females. His cases display a man who is extremely violent toward women, full of rage, and in some of the cases, he had bound the women, facts of which raise many red flags for this new cold case unit. So David Lycan is looking good. Focusing on Lycan becomes a sort of if the shoe fits kind of thing, with one of the major factors in pursuing him being that David lived on his family's farm, located directly next to the quarry along that desolate road. So they draft a search warrant for Lycan's property, thinking they are likely going to find the girls buried somewhere, or at the least some type of indication that he had a hand in abducting, in raping, and killing the girls. Makes sense. I mean, this all seems to be coming together, fitting into place with this guy, David Lycan. A 1960 Studebaker is not an easy car to get rid of. It's not as if you can chop it up like the cars today, dismantle, and sell the parts on eBay, or hide them piecemeal all over the place. You'd need torches and special steel cutting saws, etc. Or perhaps a backhoe, which most farms have on hand, so you can bury the car. Just saying. Investigators hope they serve that warrant and, in a barn, hidden under some overgrown brush or a tarp, or even under a huge mound of dirt, they find that Studebaker. Or any sign the girls were on that farm. Then they can drag old David Lycan in and squeeze the guy until he cracks. Lycan is a serial sexual predator of the worst type. So your odds are good you will find something. In these types of warrants, more so back then, you were expected to explain to the judge what you were hoping to find. List exactly what you were looking for before a judge would sign off. They list sexually explicit photos and souvenirs, like hair clippings, footwear, underwear, and jewelry belonging to the girls. They also include the chance they will find other potential unknown bodies. Lycan's rape victims describe a crazed man who was fixated on taking pictures while doing strangely violent and reprehensible things to them. Beyond that, when the new cold case unit went back and looked at the nosy neighbor's tip, they discovered there was a bit more to it than had been originally thought. During that party line conversation he overheard, the guy named David and Pam discussed both having hangovers from the previous night. Then David spoke about slamming Pam's hand in a car door before creepily saying to her, "I wish I had a camera so I could take pictures of you." So when they later lock onto David Lycan and interview all those victims who say he was fixated on taking pictures, well, that shoe seems to be fitting better and better every time they turn over a new rock. Back in 1971, the South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigation had actually looked at David Lycan as possibly being involved, simply because they had heard things about how aggressive he was toward females. But they had nothing on him at the time, and he had not yet had a history of rape and kidnapping and violent assault. So they filed their reports about him and moved on. To add to the credibility of the nosy neighbor and that party line call, in August 2004, the new cold case unit conducts a second interview with Pam's father. They ask him if Pam had any injuries during the time period of her disappearance. Yes, he says. Her hand. She injured it when some guy tried to grab her in a car one night. Then they re-interview several of Lycan's victims to see if any of them could offer anything new. And this is where things get very interesting, considering the resolution in this case later on. One victim reports seeing a Studebaker on the Lycan family farm and that the quarry was very close to the edge of the acreage the Lycans owned. The car, this victim says, was parked way out in a back field and couldn't be seen from the road. So they ask her if she recalled ever seeing any bodies out on the farm, or even limbs inside the Studebaker. Which feels like a strange question, but the way in which she describes Lycan, it felt possible that he could have been a sadistic serial killer as well, capable of anything, including dismembering his victims. This particular woman had been threatened by Lycan with death if she ever talked about her assault. He also threatened to murder her children and expose her by sharing photos he had taken during the assault. Lycan, she implies, is a real nasty piece of work in every possible way you could imagine. I see Cheryl lying over the steering wheel of that car and Pam with her head on the passenger window, the woman tells the new cold case unit in 2004, which is pretty damn specific, if you ask me. I fear him. He is capable of killing, she says next, crying. Then they show her a photo of the gravel pit, that quarry where the kegger was that night. When she stares down at that picture, she becomes emotional and has a visceral reaction, shaking and crying uncontrollably. At the time, Lycan is in the process of doing 225 years in a South Dakota state penitentiary. So they assure her he will never hurt her or anyone ever again. The case seems to be all coming together. If you're looking at it from a circumstantial evidence point of view, they have more than enough to search the property and eventually question David Lycan. In the affidavit accompanying the search warrant, they list additional items they are looking for on the Lycan property based on several additional interviews they conducted over several months. One is the remains of Pam and Sherri, which they believe will be found on the Lycan farm. 2 is the Studebaker. And 3 is a gray galvanized top-loading feed grinder and a large unpainted wheelbarrow. It appears they now believe David Lycan could have dismembered the girls and fed their body parts into that machine to get rid of them. What's more, they had it on good information that Lycan's parents had been helping him cover up his crimes. And as the detective writing the warrant describes, the parents also, quote, interceded on his behalf. Before his trial, Lycan's parents were intimidating the witnesses lined up to put their son away. Then they find yet another victim of Lycan's who tells them that one day, when she was out at the farm, she saw the Studebaker parked near a barn, and when she looked inside, she saw Sherri and Pam. And while she was staring into the vehicle, she heard a gunshot. When she turned around, Lycan had come out from around the other side of the car, grabbed her by the throat, and choked her until she lost consciousness. When she awoke, Lycan's mother was standing over her, and the Studebaker was gone. That night, she overheard Lycan talking to his parents and his brother. "We got to take care of it," she remembered Lycan saying. So she then walked outside and came across a wheelbarrow with a blue tarp over it. When she lifted the tarp, she says Pam and Sherri's dead bodies were inside. The woman even later described what the girls were wearing and what they looked like. Further, the woman said she believed Lycan had locks of hair from both girls saved inside a Bible somewhere on the property, along with a notebook and journal detailing all the crimes he had committed, including the abduction and murders of Sherri and Pam. When they finally searched the farm, they came up short. A few car parts and hubcaps, which they were not even sure came from a 1960 Studebaker. After the search, they interviewed Lycan's brother, who told them that after Lycan's arrest and incarceration, they cleared out the farm and burned everything. It had all been a dead end. They really had nothing on David Lycan. And yet, this case continues to become stranger and more unbelievable. Remember, we have two witnesses claiming they saw the girls' dead bodies on the Lycan family farm beyond all of the other evidence. Then, this happens. In 2006, an inmate doing time in the same prison where Lycan is serving his sentence steps forward and says he has information about the two missing girls, and that information came directly from David Lycan himself. He says he would agree to wear a wire and record Lycan. So detectives wire the guy up with a recording device and send him off to initiate a conversation with Lycan. Later that day, this new source and Lycan meet up in the prison library and begin talking. As detectives, listen in. I know they are coming after me, Lycan tells the source. They are also after my brother, and the guy is going to die. I'm scared he's going to want to clear his conscience before he dies. You cannot say for sure what a person will say when they're going to die. If he all of a sudden one day wanted to tell them the girls are buried under a sidewalk somewhere, well, then it seemed Lycan was getting ready to admit to the murders, but he stopped just short of it right there. But then he adds this: I got bodies out there that they really want to find, and I really don't want to give them up. The source then asks Lycan, is there a lot of bodies they don't know about? Fargo, St. Paul, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa. Some they know about, others they think they know about. Some they haven't got a clue about, and I am trying to keep it that way. I'll tell you, he continues, that bitch in Pipestone, the one that hit her head on the bumper, that's the one I put in a barrel in Granny's grave. Now, I know where you think this is going, and it sure as hell appears to be heading that way. But I can tell you, there are two major twists coming next. Something that will blow your mind, actually. Let's break for a final time and then wrap it all up. Shocking case. One crazy-ass story about to get even crazier. Be back in a minute. What makes this case even more unbelievable is what David Lycan and that prison source, wired up by the cold case unit, talk about the day after that first recorded conversation I outlined before the break. The next day, Lycan begins talking about that night the girls went missing. He claims to have been walking along the farm road when the girls drove up. I talked them into giving me a ride, he tells the jailhouse snitch, adding how he plied them with booze and money he said he had in plenty out at the farm. So the girls decide to drive him there and, as he put it, party with him. After sitting around drinking for a while, he says he went up to Pam and told her to follow him into another barn where he had all this money stashed. Once inside the barn, he grabs her and demands sex. She rejects him. She wouldn't give me the time of day, he says on the recording. She thought she was better than I am. I could tell by the way she talked to me. She said she was going to make sure I went to jail. He then says, after getting what he wanted from her, raping her essentially, I cannot even describe how mad I was. She tried to run. I put my hands around her neck. I looked up and Sherri, he explains, is standing there in the doorway with this stupid look on her face. I tell her, you help me or I will kill you too. The jailhouse snitch then brings up the Studebaker. They talk about how I buried the whole car. You know how hard it would be to bury a car? I just buried the bodies. He goes on to say that he kept Pam alive for 6 hours and brought her, along with his brother, to Minnesota. He planned on killing her there, but he says his brother couldn't handle it and chickened out. He goes on to claim he got rid of the car in Nebraska. So, based on the recordings, they serve additional warrants and search for evidence that Lycan and his brother killed the girls and got rid of the vehicle. But they find nothing. Zilch. In 2007, Lycan is indicted on murder charges related to the girls' deaths. Those charges, however, are then dropped after, get this, investigators discover that the recording the jailhouse snitch made was a fake. He had talked another inmate into impersonating Lycan and acting out the entire conversations he had with him. All those details and an alleged confession by Lycan had been a hoax. The joke was on law enforcement. Lycan had never said any of it. Yet, the case does not end there. In fact, 6 years later, in 2013, answers finally arrive in the form of Mother Nature. Over the years, Brule Creek had flooded to the point of almost biblical proportions. But then there was a long drought, which dried up most of the water in the creek. And one day, as someone is walking near that bridge I was talking about, there it is, the Studebaker, emerging from the receding waters, upside down in the creek. The vehicle had been submerged below the surface level of the water this entire time. And in the front seat are the two girls' remains. So they tow the thing out and bring it in for forensic testing and autopsy. The first clue as to what happened to the girls is that the car was in third gear. The light switch for the headlights still turned on, and the keys are in the ignition and in the on position. Sherri Miller's purse is also discovered in the vehicle, her driver's license and several notes from her classmates found inside. The final determination. The car had gone off the road, crashed into the water, and both of the girls drowned. There is no indication of foul play involved whatsoever, which is, considering how the case progressed over the years, remarkable. I can only imagine those victims of Lycan's who told the stories about the girls were so terrified of him that they made the stories up to make sure he would never get out of prison or to get him back for what he did to them. The Attorney General and Police Department closed the case. At a press conference, Sherri Miller's family says this: "Our day has come. Through this journey for answers pertaining to our beloved sister Sherri and dear friend Pam, for we will now be able to finish the last chapter of this journey." How about that case for you this week? Wow. That's it for today. Be back here next week with a new one. Be safe, be aware. Sources for this episode include The Disappearance of Pamela Jackson and Cheryl Miller, KELO TV Media Group by Jasmine Jackson, February 27th, 2023, and a very detailed 48-page affidavit in support of a request for a search warrant, State of South Dakota versus David Lee Lycan, 2007. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinus, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.